Good evening and welcome to Alan's Italy. This show number 128, will focus on a really beautiful area of Tuscany known as the Val d'Orcia. Most specifically, the town of San Quirico d'Orcia. This is a trip that we took during the last vacation that we had taken to Italy in May of 2016. Our friend Luca and his daughter Greta drove us to this region, first picking us up in Siena and then driving us to this region. Today's show is going to have a number of different parts to it. First, I'm going to show you some really extraordinary landscapes in the region of the Val d'Orcia. Then we're going to go into three different towns that Laura and I had been to prior to the trip we just took. I believe those trips were between 2008 and 2010, and we took trips to Montalcino and Bagno Vignoni and Pienza. So we'll focus a little bit on those towns, and then the final part of tonight's show will be focusing on the town of San Quirico d'Orcia itself. And, we'll get into a number of different things in relation to that, specifically the trip that we took with Luca and Greta. Okay, so here we go. So the first thing I'd like to focus on is to place exactly where I'm talking about. And the first map you're looking at is a map of Siena with Volterra off to the west, and that was a trip that we had taken on during the previous show number 127, the trip we took with Lydia to Volterra and Montalcino. But this next map that you're now looking at is a map of the region known as the Val d'Orcia. And you can see right in the center is the town of San Quirico d'Orcia. And if you look to the south, you see the town of Bagno Vignoni, which will be the first town that I will, be discussing with you. And to the west, you see the town of Montalcino, and just below it, the monastery at San Antimo. And Laura and I had spent an overnight trip to Montalcino and traveled around that area. And then to the east is the town of Pienza. So you're looking at that right now. And the next map you're looking at is a map of Tuscany in relation to the entire country of Italy, to get an idea as to where that is. You've seen this map many times. And then this map you're looking at is the Val d'Orcia in relation to all of Tuscany. You can see it tucked away over there on the lower right-hand side, with Siena just above it, and Firenze or Florence north of that. Okay, and then you're focusing now a little more on the region of the Val d'Orcia, with San Quirico right there in the center. And finally, you're looking at the map that shows the route in blue that Luca took to take us from Siena to this region. Okay, so that pretty much pinpoints exactly what I'm going to be, the area that I'm going to be focusing on. So what you're now looking at are some really extraordinary photographs of the landscape in the area of the Val d'Orcia. And this particular region is known for its rolling hills and its beautiful stone houses. It is a wine producing area, and some of the great wines in the world are produced in this region. And the way we did it was that, we would either drive around the area as we did on our own between 2008 and 2010, or when we went back with Luca in 2016. And, pretty much what occurred on a typical trip that we took was that, for example, I would be driving and Laura would be looking at the scenery. And when she saw a particular photograph that, this would be a great photograph, she would immediately say, Alan, stop. Or if Luca was driving, Luca, stop. And we did, most of the time, we did. Sometimes the road was such that it was very, very difficult to stop and pull over. But for the most part, we would stop, and Laura would jump out of the car, and sometimes I would go out with her, sometimes I didn't, but most of the time I did. And we would talk about what exactly she would be photographing. And being an artist, she knew exactly the kind of the perfect setting and the perfect placement of everything. So that was, that worked out really, really well. And these are the things you're now looking at. You're looking at really some amazing photographs of the area known as the Val d'Orcia. And, again, you're looking at really fabulous views here of the countryside in this region. Okay, so you're focusing right now on the town, as you could see, of Bagno Vignoni. And Bagno Vignoni, as you could see, is known for this really, really large piazza right in the center of town, which consists strictly of a giant pool. And these are the hot springs that emanate from below the ground, originally due to volcanic activity in the area, and served as, as a spa for people, mostly wealthy people. You didn't have people, traveling to the spot, but you had very wealthy people, such as, for example, Pope Pius II and St. Catherine of Siena, and the eminent Lorenzo il Magnifico, who used to venture to this area to see and to, bathe in these magnificent, this magnificent water. The piazza is actually named the Square of Sources after the water that comes up from the ground in this area. And this is a really beautiful town, as you can see. Surrounding the pool are some really, really beautiful stone streets and stone houses. And we've spent a little bit of time here, most recently with Randy and David in 2010, when we had lunch right on the piazza. And the next town here that you're looking at is the town of Pienza. And the original name of Pienza was Corsignano, and it was rebuilt by Pope Pius II as the ideal Renaissance town. Pius, in fact, used it as a retreat from Rome, especially during the summer when it became very, very warm. and you're looking at some really beautiful photos now. It has a really beautiful piazza in the center. The town is the first application of humanist urban planning concepts and was rebuilt from the original town by the architect Bernardo Rossellino. Excuse me. And the final town that you're looking at is the town of Montalcino, which started out as an Etruscan town and is first mentioned in the 9th century as the town that was built by monks from the nearby abbey of San Antimo that you're now looking at. And San Antimo is a really beautiful monastery that, if you went into this area, you should definitely go to this beautiful monastery. And, Montalcino was embroiled in the ever-present conflict during the Middle Ages between Siena and Florence. And Montalcino is known primarily because of the Brunello wine, which is made from the Sangiovese Grosso grapes that are grown in the area, and Brunello di Montalcino, and there are different types that are brewed in different locations in this area, is considered to be, a world-class wine. I've had Brunello. I've also had Rosso di Montalcino, which is a little less expensive wine, and both of them are magnificent. But Brunello is, of course, the more famous of the two. And Montalcino itself is a very beautiful town to the west of San Quirico, as you could see, as you saw from an earlier map. And now the San Quirico Durcia section of the show. And you're first looking at a photograph that was taken several years ago by Laura of Luca and me in his hometown of Fellini Valdarno. And he met us with, and Greta we didn't know Greta was going to be there, but she wound up being there, which was, which delighted us. And we left from Siena, and, this is the area pretty much where they picked us up. And then we went on our way. And the photos you're now looking at are some of the photos of the countryside that we traveled through to get to the Val d'Orcia. And as you know, this is pretty much the same, similar types of photographs to what you saw earlier in the show. And eventually, of course, we wound up arriving. And you're now looking at a map of San Quirico. And we parked in that kind of gray area at the bottom with the blue letter P on it, and then walked to the gate, the Porta Nuova. And, as we walked through the gate, we passed an area that looked like gardens of some sort, but it was raining, so we decided to hold that off until later. And we walked around a little bit, but suddenly found ourselves in this piazza with the church of San Francesco. We went in, and then we began walking around the town a bit. And I can tell you a little bit about the town. There isn't much in the history of this town, except that it is of Etruscan origin, and archaeologists have found many urns and funeral objects from the Etruscan period, which are now in a museum in Siena. The first reference to San Quirico was in the 8th century in a dispute that was currently taking place at that time between Siena and Arezzo. In the 12th century, Siena took over the city, which then, of course, passed hands down to the Florentines a little later. I would say probably in the 15th century. And, it was raining it was quite nasty. So we decided to choose a restaurant, and you can see here the trattoria that we had selected. They all have their menus on the front, as you could see. And, we came to the conclusion that this was the place where we would like to spend, an hour and a half. I forget how long the meal took, but you're looking now at a photograph of the restaurant with a back garden, which looked really lovely, but of course we couldn't stay in that garden because it was raining. So we kind of were hoping that over the course of the next couple of hours, perhaps the rain would stop, and we had a lovely meal. You're looking at some of the dishes right now. And when we did finish the meal, we looked in the back garden again. There's another shot of that back garden. And the rain had stopped, but of course it was too late to really enjoy the meal. So out we went again, walking around the town until we came to this church, which is, considered the main church in the town. This is the Collegiata, which was created in the 12th century, expanded over the next 4 centuries, and actually has work by Giovanni Pisano, the famous artist who also worked on the Sienese cathedral. So these are all the photographs you're looking now at the Collegiata. And then we decided to go back to those gardens that we had seen when we first arrived. So, this was the entrance. You're now looking at the entrance to that. And the next few photographs are of our experience. And now, the rain had cleared up, so it was really lovely walking around these gardens. And it turns out that these gardens are called the Leonini Gardens. And they were first created in the very late 16th century on the property that was owned by Francesco de' Medici and donated that land to Diomede Leoni, who created the gardens the way they look now. And they never changed. So from that time till this, and you're now looking at some of these really beautiful pictures of this garden, the garden hasn't changed since then, over the hundreds and hundreds of years that, the intervening hundreds of years. And then, we found our way back to the car, and the photographs you're now looking at are of the town looking out at the countryside. You can see that it has cleared up significantly. And, this is the area that we then began driving back to Siena. This actually, what you're looking at now, is the area where we parked. So we came across this really charming house, and then of course we got back on the road and headed back to Siena on the route that you're now looking at. And that's tonight's show. And I hope you enjoyed that. It was really a pleasure bringing it to you. yet another area of Tuscany. I'd like to begin by thanking my dear friend Luca and his wonderful daughter Greta for, picking us up in Siena, coming from their home in Felligna Valdarno, driving first to Siena to pick us up, and then drive us south to the Valdorcia area. So, thank you to them. The next show we're going to do, which will be show number 129, will be a trip that Lydia took us on when she picked us up in Florence and drove us to a number of different places. The first place she drove us to was Badia a Pasignano, where she and Sabrina had come up with this plan for us to see a painting which was done by Ghirlandaio. It's a Last Supper. Ghirlandaio had done 3 Last Suppers, and this is the one that has been under restoration in Badia a Pasignano, a town we went to the previous year, and it was finally revealed, and they got an appointment with the people at the monastery at Badia a Pasignano, and we had this really wonderful time seeing that. Then, Giulio and Sabrina and their son Simone and Lydia took us to a town I'd never heard of, but really was quite an amazing town, the town of San Donato, and then back to Sabrina and Giulio's house for a really amazing lunch. And then we have a little footage of a pizza place. While we were having lunch, they indicated to us that they know the best pizza in Florence. So the next day, even though, we kind of had tentative plans to do something in the evening, our last night in Florence, we went with them to this pizza place. So that's part of it as well. And that will be show number 129. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this show, and I hope you tune in for many more in the future. Until then, buonanotte e buona fortuna.